What's good, everyone? Matt here from UK Nets Fans, and I'm joined by Cammy Anderson for another episode of BK to UK, the British Brooklyn Nets podcast. On today's episode, we'll be discussing the trade that rocked the NBA. James Harden is officially a Brooklyn Net, and he absolutely exploded for a triple-double in his first game against the Orlando Magic, which, as I recorded, was last night, so still fresh in the mind. Make sure you're following us on Twitter and Instagram at UK Nets Fans, the pod itself on Twitter at BK2UK Pod, and subscribe to us on YouTube by searching UK Nets Fans. All of our episodes are available to watch, so make sure you check it out. We've also got a Teespring store where you can buy tees and hoodies and other bits and bobs to support what we're doing. But with that out of the way, Cammy, mate, first impressions. What did you first think when you heard the news?
I mean, I couldn't really believe it, and even when he kind of took to the court for that first time last night, as of time of recording, it still didn't quite seem real. Obviously, when we kind of started season 2 of the podcast, there was a lot of talk about it, and everyone just kind of went a bit quiet, and it didn't kind of look like it was happening. I think we all kind of thought, right, that's it, nothing's going to happen, and yeah, I don't think we really expected this to kind of come around, but then Woj and your Shams and all that started tweeting again, and yeah, it just seemed to happen really quickly. Also, it was ourselves and the Sixers kind of vying for Harden, and obviously we won that battle in a massive trade that, as you quite rightly said, rocked the NBA, and yeah, mental, and still can't quite believe that it's actually happened.
Yeah, it's weird. I think I'm going through those, what is it, the 7 stages of dealing with something or whatever it is. First, it's like complete disbelief, and then it's like grief of losing Jarrett Allen and Karras, and I'm slowly working towards acceptance. But yeah, I'm with you, mate. I think I'm still getting over seeing KD in a Nets uniform, and then all of a sudden you add James Harden to the mix as well. It's just a bit weird to get your head round. But he is here, so I think let's start off with what it cost us with the package. Obviously, we've had to say goodbye to Karis LeVert, Jarrett Allen, Taurean Prince, and Rodion Kurucs. What do you think we'll miss the most from those, the main 2 players, we'll say, with Karras and Jarrett?
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. Obviously, all respect to TP and Roddy, but they weren't exactly players that I think we'll miss. I think both players are replaceable, and let's be honest, Roddy wasn't exactly playing much, and yeah, so he's not really much of a loss, and it managed to get the deal done. Obviously, his inclusion. So, yeah, not going to complain about that. With regards to Jarrett Allen and Karis LeVert, obviously they're 2 huge losses. Jarrett Allen made a real leap this season. I think just last week we were saying how he's really taken that leap. He could maybe be in the top 10 kind of centre in the league contention in a matter of years. And obviously Karras, we all know the kind of impact he can make as a starter off the bench. And I mean, in the kind of what proved to be his final few games, he made a real impact whilst we had to deal with lots of absences. And yeah, it's a real shame to see both Karras and Jarrett Allen go. I think Joe Harris, to get a whole team that kind of started this process, now have gone, it is quite sad that it's kind of done, but also well where we are now. And obviously, I think one of the main things to come out of this trade, obviously aside from the players being moved themselves, was Karras' unfortunate kind of injury, if you like. Obviously, during his physical for the Pacers, they picked up kind of a small mass in his kidney, and obviously we don't know too much about that yet. But I don't think it'd be right of us to kind of downplay any potential severity of it. But we've just got to be thankful that this has been found. And I mean, this trade could well have saved Karras' life, and obviously hope that he gets well as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's a great point. Obviously, nothing but well wishes to Karras and whatever it is he's dealing with. As you say, we don't really know. But it feels like we've kind of gone over the package a lot over this season of the podcast, because obviously this has kind of been bubbling for a little while. But I think I was more upset, and I am still more upset with Jarrett Allen being on the move than Karras. I think with Karras, he's really, really good, but he was kind of struggled with efficiency, struggled with staying on the court with various injuries through no fault of his own, I think. He was always kind of supposed to take that next leap. It feels like we've been saying for like the last 2, maybe 3 seasons that, he could, if he just like turns into an elite defender, or if he just turns into that takes that all-star leap, then it'd be really, really positive for the Nets. But he never hasn't really got there yet. I think, what is he, 26, 25, 26? So he's not like super, super young. But yeah, it's going to be, I know Indiana originally drafted him, and he's been on their radar for a long, long time. So it's nice to see that he's going to go somewhere that's appreciated. But yeah, as I say, Jarrett Allen is by far the biggest loss. He was our best defender. He was our best center. He leaves a huge gap in the roster. And I guess DeAndre Jordan got what he wanted, and he's now our de facto starting center. Whether or not he'll be our sort of center at the end of games remains to be seen. I hope he isn't, but we shall see, I suppose. But yeah, I think, yeah, it's strange talking about sort of trades and free agency and stuff. At the beginning of this season, Nets fans would have been happy if we traded for Aaron Gordon. And all of a sudden, we've got an MVP to add to our other MVP. And we'll come on to it later, but we can see what can happen when they do team up and if it does go well. So, yeah, I think they're going to be missed, but it's definitely exciting times ahead for Brooklyn, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you think they'll do in their new teams? And obviously different teams, different styles, and yeah, also lots of kind of things to take in. And I did notice that Roddy actually played 20 minutes for Houston the other night as well, following the trade, which was something that I don't even think he played 20 minutes across the season for us. So to go from virtually nothing to 20 minutes at Houston, I mean, it's worked out pretty well for him. But what do you think about the others?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, with Karras getting on the court, I think he's has the potential to do really, really well. I think in terms, because obviously Houston got Victor Oladipo, trading that to Indiana for Karras. Sorry, the other way around. But I think Karras will do really well. I think he's going to be one of the more primary options. I think that the rest of the roster around the Nets just got too overshadowing for him, really, to really be that primary option. So Karras, I think, will do okay. Jarrett Allen has just gone to a team that is seemingly full of bigs. So I'm not sure if that's going to be just a temporary thing, or because I know he's got, not long left on his contract at all. So perhaps he isn't long for Cleveland and he goes somewhere else to do there. Taurean Prince, I think it was my hot take that he'd have a resurgence of a year, and I think he was on his way to doing that. But I think with him being primarily a 3-and-D guy, I think he's going to be just fine in Cleveland. If he does stick around, I think he's going to be slotting in just fine pretty much for anywhere he goes because of the skill set he has. And yeah, just like you say, like Roddy was an absolute surprise getting that 20 minutes in Houston. I saw he got a couple of buckets. So I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Roddy. So hopefully he'll find some form. I know they like shooting the three over there in Houston, and if he can find his rookie Roddy form, then I think he'll do just fine. But talking of roster moves, we have got 4 open roster spots. Obviously, with Spencer Dinwiddie's disabled player exception, we've got the ones that have gone around for the couple of moves. We've also got potentially another 2-way contract. Opening up for us, which leads us on to a listener question that we got from Tyler in our Discord server. He said, it'd be good to hear you guys talking about potential free agent signings. Who's going to strengthen us defensively? Orlando and OKC recently had well over their season averages against us. So with gaps to be plugged, who do you think is going to fill those gaps?
I mean, I think one of the main gaps in the gap that we should be prioritising to fill is that of centre. Obviously, we do now only have DeAndre Jordan as a kind of natural centre with Jarrett Allen away. Of course, Jeff Green can play at the 5, KD can play there, Reggie Perry can play there as well, and even Claxton. But we really do need another kind of player that's in there and solid defensively, because I don't think we can underestimate how much we're missing with Jarrett Allen's kind of departure. Thankfully for me, my job was made a lot easier when it came to names, and this kind of goes for other positions and just in general. There was a post in one of the Nets Facebook groups that listed off tons of free agents that some of them I can't even say I've heard of, but some of them they're all right. I think they could come in and be a decent squad player. So some names we've got the likes of JJ Barea, Kai Bowman, Isaiah Thomas, former net Alan Crabb, another former net Jamal Crawford, Lance Stevenson's there, another former net in Iman Shumpert. Then I may as well just go for the other net as well. Rondy Hollis Jefferson. There's tons of names certainly there. I know when me and Aidan were speaking about potential options for centre, he'd brought up the idea of Dwayne Dedman possibly. He's a free agent now, can shoot the free, can defend. So, I mean, there's certainly no shortage of options, and we've got a lot of kind of roster spots to fill and different ways to fill that. And I think, given how we've seen us trade for Harden and we make the right move at the right time, I'm sure we'll do that if one of these players kind of expresses an interest or if such a deal is possible.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of potential fits, which I think could be quite interesting. I think obviously Dwayne Dedman, like you say, but also Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, I know, is a bit of a defensive specialist when it comes to being a centre. So I think he's an option, which I think might be quite nice. I would love to see. I think I've got some sort of problem with. I just love undersized guards. So Isaiah Thomas would be another great option. I think for us, we're having another ball handler. I also think Michael Beasley is going to end up on this team just because of his history with KD. Obviously, was supposed to be part of the bubble nets, but never ended up joining us. But yeah, this is where my Nets homerism kind of comes around to bite me in the butt. So I don't really keep too close of tabs on who are out there when it gets past the really obvious names on other teams. So these kind of sneaky under the radar signings are going to be a surprise. Obviously, we're going to touch on it in a little bit with some media stuff that went on this week. But Sean Marks said that this roster isn't done, and I think, given Sean Marks' track record, I think we'll know that he'll pull something off. We've got a lot of room on the roster, but we don't have a lot of cap space. Obviously, I think with the addition of James Harden, we got rid of multiple players, but with the addition of Harden, we still added $7 million to our cap. So thank God Joe Tsai's got some deep pockets, because he's going to have to pay a lot of luxury tax to keep this team kicking. But yeah, so with that, I think it goes on to the question that I got so many tweets and sort of questions coming in at me from like random. This obviously shook the NBA, because I got random people tweeting me at UK Nets fans, just kind of saying, "Oh, it'll never work," and all this kind of stuff. But what do you think the potential fit is going to be like? Obviously, we saw it in one game last night against Orlando. But how do you think that this all sort of pieces together when the roster is all back together?
I mean, when you consider the last match against the Magic, where Harden made his debut, and the fact that they were kind of putting stuff together on the fly, Harden hadn't even trained with his new teammates, and obviously he kind of knew some of them, had done pre-season workouts with them and stuff like that. But obviously that's not the same as playing in an actual NBA game. And I mean, in the beginning, I think there was some kind of signs that, right, it might take a little bit of time, but as the game went on, KD and James Harden barely even broke a sweat, and they made both the kind of points tallies and kind of stat lines look so effortless. And I mean, we kind of spoken to death about the potential fit earlier on when the kind of Harden links were about, and I think a lot of people had concerns, but based on the way Harden and KD managed to link up within one game, yeah, I mean, I've not really got any concerns. And I think if anything now, it's more the concern of how does Kyrie Irving fit into this rather than how does James Harden fit into it. And I mean, given the way that superstars are, they'll find a way to play. And as I've said in the next Discord chat, although Harden is also known for being in like a player who sets up and gets lots of assists, to me just how unselfish he is. And obviously he's known for being a kind of ball dominant player. He was always the kind of main man in Houston, and I mean, he kind of is the main man here. Obviously, him, KD, and Kyrie are kind of sharing that role at the moment. But there was just so many times, as I pointed out, he'd drive to the basket and kick it back out for Joe Harris or whatever for a nice easy free. And I mean, yeah, you like seeing that. Obviously, Harden could have quite easily scored way more on his debut. I mean, he scored 30 plus anyway. It's not like he scored barely any points, but it was nice to see the fact that he's wanting to try and build that chemistry. And I think it was maybe Aiden that said it earlier on about, in an earlier podcast, should say, about KD and Kyrie drawn defenders. Now we've got Harden, that's another player drawn defenders. And we were already excited by the prospect of Joe Harris getting tons of open threes. And I mean, again, it's going to be even more now that they've got to keep an eye on Harden, KD, and Kyrie. So, yeah, I mean, also we'll give it a few games. We need to wait and see, but certainly the first signs with KD and Harden anyway, more than promising. And yeah, certainly can't complain with the way they played last night.
Yeah, it's an absolute joke. I think, like you said, I think it was really nice with Harden's selflessness in that first half, especially. He had more assists than he had field goal attempts. I think at the half he had 8 assists, but he'd only attempted 7 shots himself. So I think that's a nice way to endear himself to his new teammates and to the fans and stuff. But I think the main thing that will go on with the fit is obviously both KD and James Harden were absolutely on fire, as you quite rightly say. But both of them played 40 minutes last night against an Orlando team that, had just been blown out by Boston. They're on a pretty terrible run of form. So although it came so effortlessly for them, I think it was a closer game than it could have been. Obviously, like you say, they haven't practiced together, all that kind of stuff. But with Harden coming in, I think when Kyrie comes back, I think they have to stagger the minutes. I think that's how this team really blooms into something unstoppable. And just having, 2 of the 3 on the court at the same time, at all times, is just going to be an absolute headache for any other team. So, yeah, it's going to be really, really strange. Obviously, with the roster still to sort of develop or to be finalized, it's hard to really say about potential lineups and stuff like that. But let's just say when Kyrie comes in, how do you see the lineups going out from sort of in an ideal world?
I mean, obviously Harden or Kyrie could also start at the 1 or the 2. So, I mean, I think you could put it either way. Maybe it depends on kind of the matchup that they'll be facing against opposition that will determine whether Nash puts Kyrie at the 1 or at the 2 or vice versa with Harden. And yeah, so they'll fill out the guard spots. That's a certainty. Then Joe Harris at small forward, KD at the 4 and DJ at the 5. Obviously, DJ's maybe not the ideal choice there, but let's be honest, he's pals with KD and Kyrie. He's gonna play all the time, regardless of how badly he does. And unless we bring in a new centre, well, he's going to be there, and we're just going to need to get used to it. But that said, obviously, KD at the 5. Yeah, there's certainly lots of options, and although we did give up a lot of players, it kind of seems like we've got more versatility now, and that sounds really strange given, as I said, well, I think there's a lot of different options we can have. I like the point you raised about the fact staggering minutes, those 40 minutes a night just aren't sustainable, and we can't play all 3 of them for 40 minutes a night because they can't really do back-to-backs, let alone playing 40 minutes and then attempting to play back-to-backs. If we can try and get them playing back-to-backs, that's excellent. And I think, yeah, we probably will stagger them. We'll probably always have at least one of them on the court, if not 2. And yeah, that makes it very difficult for other teams. I think it will tire them down because not every team is in the position of being able to field 3 superstars at once. Obviously, there's teams out there who've got 1, some who have 2, but then when you're trying to stop 3 at once, you're going to need to keep out your best 5 the whole game, whereas we can kind of rotate in and out. And yeah, I think that could help us out quite a lot throughout the season when teams think, right, we can do this, we've got to keep it in sight, and then they just get knackered and then end up blowing them out come the end of it. But yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of options, and Nash has obviously been quite flexible for starting lineups, obviously injuries and COVID and stuff like that's changed it. I think last night against the Magic, it was a 9th different starting lineup of the season already. So yeah, just need to kind of wait and see. I don't think we're quite settled on the lineup, but the one that I'd initially said, I think that is the lineup for me that I'd most like to see. What about you?
No, yeah, I think you're exactly right. I had the exact same one down, but that second unit, I think, is looking really good as well. So I think Tyler Johnson coming back from health and safety protocols and him teaming up with Bruce Brown, I think those are some really, really versatile guards to have, sort of either playing with either Kyrie or James Harden when the other one is resting. Obviously, Brown had a really, really good showing against Orlando last night again. Shamit as well, I think, is finding form, but having a second unit of Tyler Johnson, Bruce Brown, Landry Shamit, TLC, and Jeff Green, I think that's a really healthy place to be in. And then you add in Reggie Perry, who again is looking good with more minutes. Chris Chiozza, who I don't need to say any more about. For Chris Chiozza, sorry, but for 5'10", 5'11", he's picked out so many sort of cross-court passes out of passing lanes over the last couple of games. It's ridiculous. So his intelligence is off the charts, I think. And word on the street is Nicholas Claxton isn't too far away. I think maybe 5 or 6 weeks from his right knee tendinopathy or whatever it is. And then those 4 other spots, which could be absolutely anyone. So I think, as far as lineups go, as far as it stands today, I think we're in a really, really good place. So all this chat of us getting rid of our depth, I don't really buy it at all. I think, we've got, especially when it comes to playoff time, I think we've got a solid rotation of, 8, 9 players that are going to cause any team a problem. And yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be ridiculous. So obviously Harden got announced officially. Obviously, it took a little bit of a while, but there's been a couple of media appearances or media availability over the last week. I think if we're going to roll them up all together in this next segment, but obviously Sean Marks spent some time talking to the media, discussing Kyrie and his fines and his prolonged absence. As well as James Harden being unveiled after a little bit of keep him waiting from ESPN, I think. But of the media availability appearances that have been on offer this week from the Nets, what sort of things have jumped out to you?
So the Marks one for me, there were a few good points on this one. I think when the kind of trade for Harden was announced, he was asked about the fact that we've given up a lot of picks. I don't think we control a first-round pick for the next 7 years or something like that. And obviously, the last time we traded away kind of our future, if you like, less said the better kind of thing. It did take a lot of years to recover from that. And yeah, I think it's a tricky one, but I quite like the way that he described it as we're not bankrupt yet. We still do have first-round picks. There are pick swaps with Houston. And let's be honest, it's unlikely Houston are going to finish above us anyway. So, yeah, but we've still got first-round picks as far as I'm concerned, and I think we've still got a few seconds. I know we did give up a few up in that deal for Harden, but we still do have picks. And ultimately, if we manage to perform how this kind of everyone wants us to, in the kind of expectation, first-round picks won't matter because we'll be late first rounds anyway, and we'll be too busy winning to really care about first-round picks. So yeah, I think it's certainly a risk, but a calculated one. We all know Sean Marks all too well about what he does. He doesn't do stuff just for the sake of doing it. He's clearly thought of this. And I mean, to give up a few first-round picks to get James Harden, and if you win the title for a few years, yeah, I mean, you're not even going to think about the picks that were given up. But another thing, in one of Mark's things, obviously discussed Kyrie and all his fines quite a lot. The thing that stood out to me was him saying that he was disappointed to not have Kyrie in the trenches. He didn't really give much away about why Kyrie's been out, and I think the quote was something like, "If it's for well-documented reasons, we've got to support that, whether it's our players or our staff." And whether he actually knows why Kyrie's out or not, I don't know. Could also just be the kind of typical media protection, just not wanting to have too much away. But yeah, certainly a little bit worrying there. What did you think of Mark's comments on Kyrie?
Yeah, I think he was very, very protective, which I think you want from your GM. But I liked how he kept sort of likening it to any other industry. I think like if you or I had some sort of stuff going on outside of work and we needed some time off and didn't really want to talk about it, a good boss or a good manager would kind of say, "Cool, all right, take all the time you need." and they wouldn't really discuss it publicly. So I think that was quite a nice to see from Sean Marks. But the other thing that jumped out from me from this media sort of week was Sean Marks discussing the culture. And obviously, he said that sort of, I haven't got the quote sort of directly in front of me, but he's saying that, back when the first sort of round, we shipped out all the other first round picks for the other trade we don't talk about, that they tried to establish that identity, and culture was the buzzword. So it was all trying to establish that culture. And we go back to D'Lo and all that kind of stuff, and even players before him. But establishing that culture and establishing that kind of reputation as a competent franchise again. But he says it's always evolving. So we go from a hard-working culture to a fun culture to a scrappy culture to a winning culture, and now we're trying to build that championship culture. So I think it was nice. It was a nice kind of two fingers in the air to the people that are saying that we forfeited our culture and it's all a terrible thing. But like you said, I think you make this trade 10 times out of 10. The opportunity to have MVP level talent on your roster doesn't come around all that often. So I think, I'm trying to think of a team to kind of liken it to, but it's, if you don't make swings like this, then you end up like a team like Portland, I think, where you're a really good team, but you're never really in the mix for winning it all. But you're a sort of that kind of second or third tier team, and I think some fans are happy just kind of keeping the status quo, keeping the popular players and all this kind of stuff, but not really doing anything. But I think we're in the business now of trying to win a championship, so we have to make these moves that Sean Marks again said were really tough decisions to make, that he didn't take lightly, to kind of make those moves and be that team and win it all. So I think it was a really nice set of questions from Sean Marks. But the ones that did make me laugh was when it came to James Harden's turn to talk to the media, because I saw tweets that said there was something like 90 odd reporters on that call, whereas normal Nets media calls is something like 30 or 40 on there instead. But it was quite frustrating to see James Harden getting asked the same kind of 4 or 5 questions, just worded slightly differently. So it was like, what happened in Houston? Why are you choosing the Nets? Are you in shape? How are you going to fit? Are you going to share the ball? And that was kind of it. What did you think of Harden when he finally got to talk to the press?
I mean, aside from him taking about half an hour, Nets obviously posted something like, "Oh, he'll just be here shortly," and obviously there were tons of jokes in the comments. "Oh, look, it's Kyrie's interview time now," and stuff like that. And some of the comments were quite funny. But in some of the things that stood out to me from Harden, he says he thinks the team is built to be able to play any sort of basketball. He says, and then obviously Nash in his prior interview before Harden came on and said Harden will need to get used to a different role. And whilst Harden said it could take some time, both for kind of that and just the team to gel and stuff, it might not be that case because they're all very smart. And then another thing that, we definitely seen this against the Magic. He said he's aiming to score an assist and just make the team better. And I think, as you say, all the questions were the same, and he just had to keep kind of trying to reword the stuff he'd already said. But a very positive interview from a new kind of star man. But he's one of the star men, really. It's another good interview, kind of rounding off a good week of media.
Yeah, I think he's definitely the man. I think it's hard to read into these kind of media sessions sometimes because players are always trained to say the right thing. But I think something that was really good was Harden just made it clear that I just want to win. That's all I want. I want to win, and that's what he's come here to do. So that's really, really interesting. But what do you think? Do you think this changes the Nets' kind of championship aspirations? I know we were kind of in it to we were there, or that people were saying we were there or thereabouts to win it all anyway. What do you think adding Harden does to our championship aspirations?
I don't think it changes our aspirations. As you say, we were already kind of tipped to win it with just KD and Kyrie. If anything, it's changed the expectation, though. Obviously, when you've got three superstars like KD, Kyrie, and Harden, of course, the expectations to go on and win and do so quite easily, I mean, they're absolutely huge. Humongous expectations, and let's be honest, there's no point even denying that's the fact. We've got two of the greatest scorers in league history in Harden and Kevin Durant, and then obviously Kyrie's not a bad player either. So yeah, I mean, there's certainly lots of expectations, but for me, the aspiration hasn't changed. The goal always was to try and win that championship, whether it be this year or next year. But yeah, maybe the aspirations could have changed a slight bit from the Nets' point of view, but for me, the aspiration is to win the title. Maybe the Nets now, I want to do that this year rather than next or whatever. But yeah, same for me. It's still the title. Just the expectations have got that little bit greater.
Yeah, I think the same. I think the goal is still the same. I think the pressure's just been turned up, where there's going to be more pressure, more expectation. But yeah, it was quite nice also to go back to Harden, where he said, you know, this isn't being added to this roster doesn't guarantee us a championship. And I think he's, you know, it really looks like he's re-engaged. And yeah, it's going to be super, super fun to see. But that's all the off-court stuff going on. We've touched a little bit about it, but let's get into some games and a look back at the week that was. We're gonna come to last night's win against the Magic, but we started off this week with an L against OKC, losing 116 to 129. We followed up with an unexpected win against Denver, 122 to 116. And a very, very convincing win against New York Knicks, 116 to 109. I think we'll probably dig into yesterday's game a little bit more, but just because I'm excited, is there anything that that sort of jumped out of those other three games to start the week that really impressed you or caught your attention?
Yeah, so we've got a few points for each game with regards to that OKC loss. Obviously, to lose by 13 points in a game that I think we really should have won was definitely disappointing. The way we started, I mean, I thought we were going to win it at a canter. We got 41 in the first quarter, but then in the next two quarters, we were massively outscored, and we just couldn't really recover from that. And then another thing that really caught my eye was we couldn't deal with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Hamidou Diallo. They both combined for 56 points. Both Shai and Diallo also had field goal percentages in the kind of 70% mark. And yeah, if you're wanting to win games, you've got to be kind of stopping the kind of main players in the opposition team and not allowing them that many chances. With regards to the Denver game, obviously, this will now be the game remembered as the last for Jarrett and TP, Roddy and Caris in a Nets uniform. And it was nice that we managed to go out on a win and do so in a kind of unexpected fashion, because I think last week when we made our predictions, I said we'd go 2-2. And I think I did highlight the fact that Nuggets would probably win. We'd lose just due to Jokic and Murray. And although they hadn't made a great start to the season, we know all too well how good they can be. But yeah, huge third quarter in that one. We outscored them 36-20, got us ahead and managed to win this one in the end. And KD was absolutely superb. And up until, well, last night, this was his best performance in a Nets uniform. 34 points, 13 assists and 9 rebounds. And yeah, he was unstoppable that night. As for the next game, yeah, I think this was a really good game. Obviously, we played with next to no players because of the kind of pending Harden trade. 7 of the 9 that did play actually hit double figures. DeAndre Jordan was just 1 point off hitting double figures, and Chilsa was, I think, 6 or 7. But yeah, that was very impressive that the team managed to rally around despite having very limited numbers and beat a Knicks team who, obviously, last week we said they've done quite well and surprisingly, but I mean, there wasn't really any doubt on this one. I mean, the final few minutes, the scoreline maybe got a little bit closer. We had kind of dominated, but yeah, I mean, quite an easy one there. I think Bruce Brown was absolutely outstanding in this one, 15 points, 14 rebounds. And yeah, I mean, a lot to like about that. And that was probably my favourite match of the week, even though we did obviously have Harden's debut in Orlando. Obviously, it's nice to beat your rivals. And I think that's, if I'm not wrong, we now hold the record for most derby wins since I moved to Brooklyn. And I think we're only a win or two away from either matching or surpassing the kind of all-time record. So that's nice. And then, yeah, obviously, what can we say about last night? The Harden debut. Harden and KD, as we said earlier on, absolutely breezed it. Not a sweat. And yeah, massive boost to kind of end the week. And when we were kind of predicting 2-2, we finished the week 3-1. So yeah, a first 3-1 winning streak for the season. What did you kind of make of the week?
Yeah, it was. I'm not going to lie, I was still in the swings of COVID before at the beginning of the week. Thankfully, I'm kind of all good now. But yeah, it was a frustrating loss against OKC, especially because they've been having a little bit of a torrid time of it. The Denver game, Jokic was absolutely unstoppable as he is, but I think those are the games that we're going to really miss Jarrett Allen, because I think he made a good account of himself. I think it was quite fitting, that he played against one of the best bigs in the league on one of his final games in a Nets. His final game in a Nets uniform, and we got that win out. I think the Knicks game was really, really good, especially as you say, because we were short on our roster, but people like Bruce Brown stepping up, DeAndre Jordan also stepping up against his former team, and I think DeAndre's got to be conscious of the reputation he's got. I think whether or not that really kind of spurs him on to do really well and spurs him on to prove himself as a worthy player of being on the starting lineup of a championship team remains to be seen. But I think I said in our last week's podcast that the Knicks really do tend to kind of step up when they play the Nets. But I was really, really happy to see that that we got the W on that one. And yeah, last night, wow. I mean, it's very rare that I stay up for games anyway, because I've got a 2-year-old daughter and I'm 33 years old, and I'm just a tired guy. But Harden looking immense, a really quiet first quarter, looking to get others involved. Touched on it earlier with having more assists than field goal attempts in that first half. Finishing with 32, 14 assists, 12 rebounds, 4 steals and a block. Not bad for a guy that can't play defense. The first 30-point triple-double in NBA history for a new team debut. So that's, history made, which is really, really good. KD finishing with 42, becoming the first net to score 25 plus for 9 straight games. He's only played 10 games for us, which is mad. But yeah, I tweeted last night, someone needs to tell KD that he's coming off an Achilles, because I don't think he remembers. He doesn't look like he's missed a step. But yeah, it was just such fun to watch, and just the disbelief that I had. They've not even practiced together. It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, it's a very, very good time to be a Nets fan at the moment. But yeah, I've got before we have a little look ahead to next week's games, we've actually had some listener questions in, and I haven't prepped you on these, so this is going to be a little bit of just a freestyle. But Andy Suits on Twitter said, "We have an embarrassment of riches offensively, but what about defense? How are we going to stop LeBron and AD in a 7-game series? What do you think of that?"
Bruce Brown.
Done. Next question.
Done. I mean, yeah, there's certainly concerns, but then I think it was either yourself or Aidan in one of the earlier pods said, why should we be the ones that are worrying about how to stop teams? We should be letting teams worry about how they're going to stop us. If it's LeBron and AD and we do manage to make it to the finals and it's against the Lakers, there's 2 of them. Well, there's three of us. We've got 3 superstars, so they've got one more person to worry about than us. And obviously, I think KD will maybe be kind of marking AD, obviously similar height, but then he could obviously switch on to LeBron as well. Kyrie probably isn't going to be much use to mark either of them, but then again, Harden as well, not known for his defense, but yeah, it's tricky to tell. But yeah, I think the way we should look at things is let teams worry about us rather than us worry about them, because if we do that's how we lose games. If we let them worry about us, we'll win the games. And yeah, we'll wait and see, but we've managed to do all right against some quite big name players already this season. Obviously, that's now kind of a bit hard without Jarrett Allen, but if we manage to bring in a centre, well, could get that bit easier. But who cares if we concede 100 odd points? We're going to score 200 anyway with the 3 superstars. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I can understand where this concern comes from, but let's wait and see.
Yeah, shout out to Jeff Green as well, who I think's who's looked really, really good, especially last night and against the Knicks. I think he kind of balled out as well, but I think he's looking really really solid as a kind of interior defender. So maybe, you know, the old OKC twin towers of Jeff Green and KD maybe again might be able to do a number on some bigs. But yeah, we'll see on the new roster additions. Got another one from Straight Buckets on Twitter, who said, with Kyrie's absence, Harden's poor play ahead of the trade, was this all part of the Big Three's plan to accelerate the trade? So he sent me a bit of a conspiracy theory on this. But do you think that Kyrie going AWOL and Harden sort of spitting his dummy out basically in Houston, do you think this was all sort of an elaborate plot from the players to force this trade, or do you think there's any coincidence, any kind of connection between the two at all?
I don't think so, because I think when the Harden links initially surfaced, he was kind of looking to get out and stuff. Obviously, I'd said I want to go to Brooklyn and stuff, and that was months ago. He said that before the kind of trade talk picked up, and yeah, I mean, I don't know if there is some big plot that was there. If there was, well, great, we've managed to get James Harden, but I mean, personally, I'm not buying too much into it. I did see a lot of kind of speculation about that, and obviously it was the whole kind of after Harden was traded for it was, oh, Kenny can now maybe play on Saturday, and it was like, oh, funny that, but yeah, I'm not buying the kind of thing that there's a plot, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of a far-fetched one. I think it would be pretty. It's something like out of a mob movie if it was all orchestrated and stuff. I don't think there's anything but we don't know, and we're going to have to wait until Curry talks about where he's been and what he's been doing, apart from seemingly partying for family birthdays with no mask on. But we shall see. Last listening question from Darren S in our Discord server, which is getting really busy recently, which is really, really cool. He says Reggie Perry has got some minutes recently and looked good, praised by KD, seasoned vet, I think was his comments. How good can he be, and does he have a part to play going forward, regardless of us filling up empty spots?
Yeah, I mean, I think he does. Also, we went for him in the draft, and I think the comment by Marks at the time was we would have picked him sooner if we could, or something along those lines. And I think Reggie himself then said he knew he was going to the Nets when he was picked, like already. So, I mean, he's certainly a player that I think we see a lot in. He's maybe played a lot more than you'd maybe expect from a late second rounder so far. But to be fair to him, he's not actually looked too bad for a young player who's just come into the league. He's managed to get himself points. He set quite a lot of nice screens in that Magic game, and yeah, KD's obviously fond of him, and who might argue with one of the best basketballers in the past decade or what have you. So yeah, I think Perry's certainly got a role to play. Whether that role kind of stays similar to the one he's played thus far, kind of as the season progresses and we hit the playoffs and stuff, I don't know, but I think he can certainly fill out and be a decent squad player who can come in, and yeah, given the way he's played so far, that's given him more than enough evidence to believe that's the case.
Yeah, he certainly looks pretty handy. I think it was quite nice to see there was a no-look dish from James Harden to Reggie Perry last night against the Magic, which was really, really cool. So, if those guys develop a bit of chemistry, I know that's there's some alley-oop chemistry been lacking somewhat in this Nets team this season. But I think if Harden and Perry keep going from what we saw this past game, then I think Reggie Perry's got a really, really bright future. So yeah, it's awesome to see. Is there any other points about the Harden trade or the Magic game particularly that you want to hit on before we look ahead to next week?
You'd mentioned the Harden pass there to Reggie Perry. The kind of nearly full court pass to Jeff Green was unbelievable. Everyone's favourite referee now after last night's game is absolutely loving it. So much so that he actually forgot that we're living in Brooklyn and called us New Jersey. But yeah, that was a quite a funny wee moment in that game. But yeah, good on Bill the ref for taking it well, because there was I think he was speaking to kind of one of the Nets officials or whatever after it, and you could see him just kind of realising, going, oh no, I know what I've done. But yeah, it was a nice wee moment, and he took it really well, to be fair to him.
No, that was good. It was. I think the thing that got me about Bill the ref was obviously he's got this really smooth ASMR voice, but it was just him looking dead into the ref cam when he was saying his verdicts on what was going on in the court that really got me. It got me feeling tingly. It was definitely a nice little wrinkle. But yeah, looking ahead to next week, the Nets take on the Bucks on Monday, which with the Nets being touted as one of the favorites in the East. I'm sure the Bucks will have something to say about that. So that's going to be an interesting matchup. And then, quite emotionally, Wednesday and Friday we have a back-to-back in Cleveland. So we're not gonna have to wait long to see Jarrett Allen return to our screens in a Nets game, albeit playing for the Cavs, Torian Prince 2. And then we round out the week on Saturday against Miami. A tough old week. I reckon? I'm going to try and jump in there first. I'm going to say we go 3-1, and I think the Bucks will be too much for us. Obviously, with the team still not really having much time together, I think we double do the Cavs. Although I think I got a little sneaky feeling that Jarrett Allen's going to have a really good game and really, really relish the competition going up against DeAndre Jordan with their little battle that they've been having. And I think we've got enough to do Miami, who seem to have been on a bit of a skid recently. So I'm going to say we go 3-1 next week. What do you say, Cammy?
Yeah, I'm going to say the same. I think if we're going to drop a game, it will be the Bucks one. But I think if we do manage to beat them, there's no reason why we can't and shouldn't go 4-0. I mean, I think, as you said, the Bucks are very good. Perhaps our toughest test we'll face so far. Obviously, we're coming up against the two-time reigning MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they've lost just one of the last 8 games. So, yeah, they're a team in fine form, and you can see why they're one of the top teams in the East. And I think this will, although we're only kind of early on in the season, I think it will say a lot kind of about the team so far. As for the Cav games, I think we're obliged to win both of them. Obviously, the Cavs are a bit of a dumpster fire. They're not fantastic, as we've said. They've got about 1,500 centres, and of course, one of them is Jarrett Allen. And obviously, I think Andre Drummond had a good game the other night as well. But yeah, for me, we should have more than enough firepower to beat them in both games, and quite convincingly so. A stat I did notice was that they've only scored 100 or more points in 4 games this season. All 4 times they've actually won. But I think if they do manage to get 100, we will manage to stop them from getting another win. As for the Heat, they play 4 games before they take on us. I'm recording. They've not performed to we'd expect last season's runners-up to be before they face us. I think it's a back-to-back against the Pistons and then the Raptors, and then it's a back-to-back against us. They've got players who can hurt us. They've got Tyler Herro, Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, although I don't know if he'll be playing. I was kind of looking at their stats. A name who I'm not too all familiar with was that of Gabe Vincent. He's kind of popped up. He's sitting about 18 points per game at the moment. So one to keep an eye on. But I think, yeah, we should be beating the Heat. So yeah, I'll go for 3-1 and say we drop the Bucks game. But if we manage to beat the Bucks, I think it will certainly give the team a massive boost and really kind of show that we're not just here to, I'm saying make up the numbers, but not just kind of here saying we're going to do something. We are really who we are, and we're going to try and win this title this year.
That's it. I think it's I still need to get my head around it. It's not happened yet, but I think, yeah, the more we see it and the more the wins keep coming, the happier Nets fans will be. Cammy, that's all we got on the docket for today. Thanks everyone for listening. Let us know what you think about James Harden and the Nets and the fit and, the eventual champions that the Nets will be this season, hopefully. And yeah, follow us on all socials, subscribe to us everywhere, and we'll see you next time.